you go. Hello, bonjour à tous and welcome to our second 2025 SPE France webinar. This one jointly organized with the Technical Section for Sustainable Development, an event titled Entreprises pour l'Environnement, EPE, Vision and Practical Steps with Claire Tutenuit. My name is Pierre-Edouard Vincent, and in absence of SPE France President Zahra Al-Kalbi, my fellow SPE France colleague Fabiola Maisonnier and SDTS officer David Shackleton will be your hosts and moderators today. The event will last 60 minutes. We encourage you to ask questions throughout, which we'll use to fuel our discussion. This event will be recorded and available on demand on our SPE France website and YouTube channel. Before we start, I would invite you to consider joining SPE France and access the many benefits of becoming a member. A few updates, Fabiola, for SPE France. I'll put your slides onto the stage.
Thank you, Pierre-Edouard. And thank you, everyone, actually, for attending today's webinar. It's our second one of 2025. I'm Fabiola Maisonnier. I'm SPE France Communication and Outreacher, and I'm so happy to be here. And because Claire is going to give an incredible presentation. So before the presentation starts, let me give you a general introduction of SPE France. So as you can see here, we have a board of directors of this year, well, starting 2024, 2025. We have many, volunteers and members of the board working in, communications, in membership and networking, in students contacts and young professionals. Lots of things that we are doing in SPE France. Meet the board of directors. Could you go to the next slide? You can see a little bit more in better and more clear all the faces on of each of the members. So meet our board members of 2024, 2025. So what do we have in SPE France? What are the benefits of becoming a member? So you can see in the next slide. First of all, you can access to our technical resources. As you can see a little bit, we have some of those on the screen, and we have much more there. We have networking opportunities, professional development, of course, and recognitions and awards. And some of the events that we have, you can see in the next slide. Well, we have many activities, monthly conferences, online and in person. Like today, we have an online webinar, networking events, partnership and collaboration, student support like field trips. We had recently the Petrobol section in Paris, and of course dinners and meetups, etc. So what were the last events we have? In the next slide, we can see that in February we talk about AI, the digital. How is AI working in the energy industry? Was so interesting. Then in March, as you can see in the next slide, we had our 40th anniversary for SPE section in the Museum of Art et Métiers. Incredible. We had more than 100 people there from many industries on the energy sector. Incredible. We have panelists, and we had a very nice cocktail. Incredible networking. Then we had as well our sponsorships. Our sponsors. We have Total Energy. We have SLV, Subsit 7, and Technique FMC. And thanks a lot for their support. And we had our VTV, the Borders event We had some speakers there. We had some incredible young professionals that came from all over the world. Incredible networking and opportunities there. And we had as well our distinguished lecturer in April, excellent about leadership approach, was incredible speech. And we had in April our Petro Bowl 2025 in Paris with young, students, let's say, from different universities from Europe, and incredible, was very good. What we have next? Well, there's not, the agenda is not updated, but we have something that is coming in May, in June, and also September, October, and November. We're gonna have different talks, different speeches about digital as well, explore topics. We will have something about strategy. So just take a look at our posting on LinkedIn, and you will see what we have next. So with that, I give the floor to David. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabiola. All right, so I'll put your presentation up, David.
Thank you, Pierre-Edouard. Thank you, Fabiola, and welcome. Great that you all joined. I'm welcome on behalf of the SPE Sustainable Development Technical Section, founded in 2019. I'm the program chair of the Gaia Study Group, and we organize a monthly Gaia Masterclass where we take a deep dive into a sustainability topic. If you have an idea or would like to present a masterclass yourself, please do reach out, perhaps on LinkedIn. So in the Sustainable Development Technical section, we like to think like activists and act like engineers. We like to go off the edges of the oil and gas sustainability map, where there be dragons, and meaning that we look at the uncomfortable realities of sustainability in the oil and gas industry. I've put a link here to our website. Please take a look at that to look at upcoming events. And you can use this QR code over on the right here to join our LinkedIn private group and join in the conversation and action going on in there. Now, I've looked into the EPE a little bit. Now, what I like about the work of the EPE and its members, and more generally France as a country, Europe as an advanced continent, is that it has been where they be dragons. And seen the dragons of sustainability face to face and lived to tell the story. And it is this story that we're here to hear about now. What efforts have been made in sustainability, and what has been the experience, and what still needs to be done to solve the sustainability issues facing our generation. EPE is the French partner of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. The WBCSD, many of you will know it, it's a CEO-led organization driving eco-efficiency and sustainability actions by global companies since the 1990s. In my last company, French and global company SLB, I volunteered with PIDEX, the Petroleum Industry Data Exchange nonprofit, to bring oil and gas Scope 3 carbon emissions into the supply chain documentation. And we were able to lean on WBCSD standards and extend these standards to enable decarbonization in the oil and gas industry. So it's a great organization and a great way of getting things out globally. So I'll hand back over to Pierre-Edouard and see you all for question and answer after the presentation.
You're on mute, Pierre-Edouard.
Sorry, you know why I was mute. So it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today. Claire Tutenuit is a former graduate in math from École Normale Supérieure and Political Sciences, Institut d'études politiques de Paris. She's also an engineer with the French Mining Corps. After 5 years with the Ministry of Industry, she joined the private sector, where she started in environment, followed by aerospace sector, spending 15 years with business development, strategy, and management responsibilities. In 2005, Claire took the role of Délégué Général of Entreprises pour l'Environnement, which is EPE, EPE is the French partner of the WBCSD, which David just mentioned. It is a think tank of more than 60 companies sharing the goal to foster development within the limits of the planet, working together to better embed this in their operations and strategies. Nominated by EPE for this role, Claire joined the French CESE, Conseil économique, social et environnemental, in May 2021 for 5 years. Claire, over to you.
Thank you very much, Pierre-Edouard. Thank you to all for inviting me. And I really recognize that you are very brave, because you are probably one of the most difficult audience for what I'm going to tell you, which is basically how can we get out of oil and survive and live well. I will start with a very short way. I will talk mostly about this study called 2030 Milestone for the Ecological Transition, which we published at the end of 2023. But I will start maybe with very briefly, how come Pierre-Edouard, can you pass a second, or because it does not work when I do it? Sorry. So I will count on you. I will tell you. Thank you. You presented very well EPE. What you have in small is a list of logos, which is one of the major points, is that it is including companies from all sectors of the economy, from energy, agriculture to luxury goods, pharmacy, but also banks, high tech, and so on, insurance, finance, and so on. So what they like, what they find interesting is to find how the whole economy is going to move out. And what's important is that we are counting on the fact that it's not only green tech that will do the ecological transition, it's really the large emitting, the large impact companies that do it, that will do it because they have investment capacity, and they move the world. We are member-led, as is WBCSD. One of our original features is really that we manage to work with CEOs. We have a chairman who is a CEO for 3 years, rotating 3 years. We have done this study under the chairmanship of Patrick Pouyanné, continuing until next June. And he has been very active in using EPE and this transition because, as you know, he is involved in the transition of Total Energy. But he has also moved a lot of other companies. We do publish a number of good practice. Major work is good practice exchange. We do some methodologies, some voluntary commitments, and you will find our publications on the website. And I will now tell you how we started with this milestone for 2030, which actually started earlier. Pierre-Edouard, thank you. Next chart. With a study called Zen 2050. Zen is, of course, a little wordplay with zero emission net in French. You understand it even in English, which was a collaborative exploration of carbon neutrality. Is it with 3 questions? Is it technically possible? Is it compatible with economic growth? And how do people live with that? Is it really back to the hut and the candle, as we say in French? And we did this in 2018 and 19, shortly after after France gave itself a target commitment, actually, of carbon neutrality in 2050. And we found that, in fact, it was possible. You see, it's nearly a -5% per year, which is extraordinary, extremely difficult, but it is technically doable. If you increase a little bit the absorption by vegetation, things, and a little CCS we had, but you can reduce basically everything. Agriculture is resisting, is the most difficult, but we know how to do it. What happened later is told in the next chart, is that France started to have a strategy according to this. This study, Zen 2050, gave the companies confidence that, yes, we can start investing, it is worth it, we will, the movement can be sustained because response were positive for the 3 questions. But what happened later is something called the yellow vest, which I think was known worldwide. just energy prices kept climbing in the EU with the Russia war. European Green Deal started to raise also a number of questions because it was much wider than just getting out of reducing emissions. It embedded biodiversity issues. So other issues than climate started to appear as an important part of the ecological transition. Biodiversity, we are in the 6th extension, and so these stakes really forced companies to wonder about something more global than just this reduction of emissions, of carbon, of GHG emissions. Social issues were really to be taken on board as well. So after these few years, we decided, next chart, to start looking how can we approach this ecological transition. And you probably do know these two charts. One is the planetary boundaries, which is a description of what's happening initiated by the Stockholm Resilience Center, and they continue to follow it. And you see that climate change is not the worst. Biodiversity integrity is still worse, but also novel entities, pollution by various plastics at sea or chemicals in the atmosphere and so on. Land system change. We don't have sufficient resources, especially in bioresources. Obviously, the transition to reduce emissions is done with biogas, biofuel, biomaterials, and so on. And there is no sufficient land to do that unless you have a really very quick land system change. And of course, the geochemical flows that are also moved. So this has to be taken into account. You cannot just do climate because you have actually pluses and minuses. If you focus on climate change, you destroy biodiversity or novel entities, put no more chemicals and so on. So it's important. The second thing is really how can we embed the social issues. And that's the donut economy by a sociologist called Kate Raworth, that a British one, who you probably may have heard of, at least you probably know this scheme, saying that the United Nations adopted in 2015 not only the Paris Agreement, but also the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, which means that we try to satisfy, ensure essential needs for the 8 billion or 9 billion people. And we face this ceiling of the planet, of the one planet, with all these planetary boundaries that we have seen. And there is a place, safe and just space for humanity that the economy has to remain inside, sort of. So that was the assumption on which we decided to look at what it means to do this ecological transition. Next chart is, and so the question leading to the study was, Europe has made the Green Deal, has made commitment with the Paris Agreement, has made commitment with the Kunming-Montreal Agreement on biodiversity, stopping loss of biodiversity. And what do we have to do by 2030 to be on a credible ecological transition pathway, trajectory, in line with these commitments? France and Europe made about roughly the same commitments. So that's what we tried to respond using a method. First, we decided not to do it internally, but to bring some consultants, experts, to bring good, solid data and so on. Maybe you can go to the next chart, Pierre-Edouard. Since we decided to have external resources, we decided to fund it as well, and 29 companies supported the study, which means that not only did they fund it, but they formed a steering group, and they actually had half a day of meeting every month for about 18 months. So it is not only a study that we ordered from an outside expert, it's really a study that had been appropriated, debated in depth with representatives of all these groups. Again, as you see, very diverse sectors. next chart. We hired these supporting experts, which some of you probably know some of. NR Data is probably known. Carbon 4 is a think tank, a very ambitious ecological think tank. Solagro is more expert in agro and so on. And Mission Publique in sociology and public opinion. We had the steering committee of the founders plus ADEME. And we also had a stakeholders committee that met twice, plus another meeting with CESE actually. So we could discuss things and solutions and avenues with them. So now that was the methodology. So what next chart? We selected this steering group, selected 13 stakes to a successful transition. And you see that these 13 stakes are actually positioned, inspired from this donut economy scheme. We selected them because we thought they were really, they needed being deepened. You don't see climate in them because, of course, on the climate we were solid enough. We felt solid enough with the Zen 2050 study on how to do it. But on biodiversity, it was not so easy. On land and biomass, actually, that was one of the outputs of the Zen 2050 study. Is that we don't have sufficient biomass for all these other uses to replace fossil fuels. And so this need for arbitration between uses was really felt to be, so we went further into this. And also, of course, the competition is between energy, materials, and food, and feed for animals and so on. So we really went into this issue. Other raw materials, and we all know what it means. More technology means more raw materials. Water, including adaptation problem. Changing the water resources. Then, the top 4 are really the limits of the planet. The bottom 5 are the essential. The bottom 4, sorry, are the essential needs which we selected, and one is obviously support for professionals. There is a lot of conversion that has to be done, will have to be done, training, new technologies, new activities. Actually, so there is a need for conversion and anticipation. Household transition. Again, this transition will have to embark people, and so you cannot just you need to make transition affordable to everybody. And to accompany people. Resilience is really to take resilience to various crises, whether geopolitical, geostrategic, or physical with climate change. And health is actually both an issue because we do have civilization that is not so good for health, as we know. And on the other hand, ecological transition is really providing a lot of benefits on that side. So at least there is this positive. The ecological transition can look like a pain, but because you need to decrease a lot of things, but at least there are benefits for health. And then in the middle, we looked into all these points in the blue part, which are need for governance. How do we make people accept and decide? We are in democracies. How do we decide to go into that transition? How do we finance? How do we ensure security and strategic autonomy? Because we know the world is not doing it at the same pace. Social norms and values was really, we need to change imaginations, change representation of what good life is. So it's very deeply embedded into minds, and we need to change these social norms and values in order to manage this transition. So that's what we really deepen these various themes. And I will go straight to, we also did, which I will not illustrate now, a number of practical cases to see what does this mean, for example, for materials, for construction materials, does this mean for food and so on. So we did some practical cases. We also did some personal stories to show how people are entering this path of transition from various positions, various activities, and both professionally and personally, so that the whole community around the study could understand how we meant change could be done. And so I will go straight to the conclusions. If you take the next, I have two charts. So that's the cases and short stories. You have these corporate vehicle fleets. What are the showstoppers? What are the incentives? How does this move? All these issues are a little bit go in circles. You don't have charging infrastructure, so companies are not very eager, and then there is not sufficient volume for car builders, car makers to launch something cheaper, to have sufficient economies and scale economies. So we looked into this, which is a big market in France and I think in Europe. We did it for one food, yogurt, and also traveling a little bit around the world for a number of things, at least the packaging, and then biosourced materials. And then we did these studies, but I will not go deeper into it. I will invite you to go and read them. So what we ended with, Pierre-Edouard, next chart, is the deliverable. One of the important deliverable was a specification for the ecological transition, some sort of a representation. What does this mean to do this ecological transition? And it's what we've decided, what we found, is that it should be only one transition. We cannot afford to do climate first and then biodiversity or resource or water or adaptation. We have to do it at once because there are conflicts sometimes, and because it's easier to move, it's cheaper to do a little bit like nature does. They don't optimize one thing. So it has to be organized into only one transition encompassing all the stakes. This has been lately confirmed at the end of last year, actually confirmed by a study called the Nexus report by IPBES, which has said climate, biodiversity, food, water, and health, what are the linkages between them? And they actually came to that same conclusion. What it means is also that we should be living differently, so better health. Living differently means that we have actually a material degrowth. We do believe it is possible to decouple, so to continue to have economic growth, but the footprint of the way we live has to decrease significantly, not only on GHG, but on water resources and so on, and bioresources. So it has to be even cement and so on. So it's material degrowth, which means that we do have new models and innovation in various areas, with obviously circularity. Circular economy is one of the ways to save resources and material footprint. But also, you cannot do just circular economy. It has to be a good share of sufficiency, meaning that you don't eat as much as you can eat. You refrain, you don't consume as much as you can consume. You probably travel less than you would like to travel, but it has to be this material degrowth means that you cannot do it with just technical solutions. It is a social transformation that can produce this ecological transition. Obviously, it can be nice, but that's it. And then the third pillar of these new models is also a different link with nature, which is today overexploited, and we are reducing the share of wildlife, and so on, with land use change. It has to be considered that actually nature is providing more when it is in good health than when it is not. It's providing different things. It's providing several things. The same forest is providing absorption, water regulation, wood. If you just transform it into a field of cultivated wood, it is not providing the other aspects, or it is not by far less. So but what this means is that these three pillars are also an invitation to develop a lot of innovation and a lot of new business models, meaning massive investments to be that are from companies and from people that have to be made affordable. And you see it with all this electricity infrastructure, whether for transportation or for storage or for delivery to cars and so on. It's a huge investment. It's also a huge investment if you want to renovate the whole housing park, all houses, all buildings. And this renovation is obviously less resource consuming than new construction. So renovation has to be, restructuration has to be preferred compared to new construction. It's also doable usually on the same lot, on the same land, rather than this city expansion that is continuing actually. But these are investments. It's actually more expensive sometimes to refurbish energetically and so on than to construct new. But so it is a massive investment, and it has to be made affordable both by companies, by innovation, and by new framework, as we are going to see in 1 minute. What we found as well is that this sufficiency is not only people refraining from consuming or buying a smaller house or buying a smaller car. It is also embedded into the infrastructure. If you start building cities where people can live well within the 1/4 city where you can access your job, public services, schools, health services, and so on, you will prefer to live in an apartment than in a house where you have to drive 20 miles, 20 kilometers before you do it. So this has to be embedded into public decisions that do these infrastructures. And it is also the same in food. It's not only lodging, but it's where you live. Transportation means food and other consumptions. And finally, we don't expect to be able to do this only by voluntary action. We know it will only happen if there are new frameworks for society to constrain, are actually doing it already with the ETS in Europe, where we have said, okay, not more than that many tons CO2 equivalent. It is also done in France with something called zero net artificialization, which is a start where cities cannot urbanize, cannot artificialize more than half what they used to in the past 10 years, something like this. So it's a reduction that is mandatory for artificialization. So these two frameworks, these two are already in place, more or less accepted, but they are. And probably new ones would have to be set up. Like, for example, the amount of wood that we allow for our own uses, whether it is to store or to fire. But we use too much wood. We're actually deforesting still a lot. And so we need to say, okay, we want to stop deforestation. We have to stop consumption, which will stop production. Or we stop production, but then, well, it's about the same. If you stop production, it's a debate. Is it better to reduce production? Probably, because then people will have a tendency to use the production much more efficiently because they want to use it more. So to have these new frameworks, you in fact need to tell populations that to ask efforts for investment, to ask efforts for how you live, really way of life, food and so on, and holiday and leisure and consumption. And so you cannot do that without giving something. And what we suggested is that it actually means a new social contract where you combine efforts that you ask the people and social equity, which is something that in France and probably in Europe is currently felt to be needed. It's when you ask people, you have sociologists asking people, what is your concern? What do you suggest the society? What should the society move towards? they are really in need of more social equity in a world where inequality is actually increasing for the past 10 years or 30 years or so, and so on. Which means that actually a whole new representation of the society has to be built, marketed, appropriated, accepted, desired, and that people find that yes, there are actually benefits in this different civilization, different society. So yes, we go into that. So that's one of the main deliverables. The second one is the next chart, and it is actually the response to the question, what should we do in the next 5 years before 2030 to be on the trajectory? And we try to find much more concrete things and these, along with these principles that I just detailed, 12 priorities where we, which we listed on this little scheme. It's a little small. It's you see there are 3 kinds of actors: public authorities, economic players, and citizens. And the words, it's several types of activities. The words are, it's closer to the business when it is mostly business responsibility, like make a transition plan in each company or accelerates circular economy models. This is really in the hands of, more in the hands of business. Make the transition affordable for all is, for example, of course, in the hands of business with innovation, service, and so on, but also in the hands of public authorities, because you will need to help the poorest people access these new ways of life, like access an electric car if you are living in the countryside and working there as well, but you are not necessarily working in your house, in your office, 5 minutes or 5 minutes walk. And so then if you go along, you have create new collaborations. It means that actually the relationship between the business world and the public authorities has to be really quite close. For example, to decide in which sector is this sector important. Do we take the path of hydrogen, or where do we put the line between hydrogen and the electricity? Without fuel cell, whatever. But so that you don't have one sector investing and then the public sector going to help another one too fast. With no business model. If you want to create these new business models, it has to be discussed and understood by both parties and the market. Continue the efforts initiated with really a request to policymakers to say, don't change the policy every other year, because we cannot work with that. If you start from the middle column bottom, we talked a little bit about these circular economy models, which of course imply action from citizens. Get everyone to work is anticipate and prepare for this conversion of jobs, or new competencies, new activities. And I mentioned, for example, you have all in minds CCS. How do we change to CCS after oil? Or how do we change, actually, if you take Total Energy, how do we move from being an oil engineer to being a photovoltaic or windmill engineer? Which I know you know already is difficult. Develop new imaginations, new representations is we did talk about this, but this is a responsibility, of course, by the public authority, but it's also by business, because advertising is one of the most powerful ways to develop new representations of what is a good life, what is normal life, what is desirable. This is considerably built by companies. So there is a lot of to be done on that side. Respect and care for nature. You will understand that biodiversity is important. We've discussed it. And if you take the last one, you have this organizing housing retrofit for all houses. And we do believe this is, of course, it will not be done by 2030, but by 2030, if we want to have done it before 2050, we have to have said, yes, it will have to be made mandatory. You cannot have a house and continue to just buy energy. You have to refurbish it to make it energy efficient. at some point, if you have, it started already, but only with a very small part of the park. So this will have to be extended. It's not nice. It's not pleasant for citizens to hear that, but it is actually a very rational thing to do. Reduced forced mobility that we discussed a little bit is how the cities should be built. Don't build a city with jobs on one end and houses on the other end, because then you have forced mobility, which is heavy and costly and adverse to transition, ecological transition. And of course, promote social fairness, which is again this trade-off between the effort you ask people and what you give in terms of the feeling of a society that works well and is more fair. These 12 priorities are the response to the question. You will see they all require the different actors of the society to join forces. They can be done at various levels, local, national, European. But of course, it needs a lot of talking and accepting and construction of this. So we suggested that it should be actually a lot of co-construction of these good business models, frameworks, creating business models, and collective deliberations. So that's the response to the question. Next chart will tell you what we have done next. First, we presented it, and it's of course, it's a new narrative, and you can feel, yes, it is a little bit theoretical, is it not? Yes, it's not yet there. But it is. It has been. What is important is that it was built with companies, and it was also discussed and built with CEOs. And it was actually, the study was actually presented by CEOs. You see Patrick Pouyanné in the middle, but you have Catherine McGregor from Engie. You have also Saint-Gobain, In Vivo, which is agricultural, luxury goods, Kering, BIC, even consumer goods, and so on. So you have very diverse sectors that have been discussing. They actually wrote a tribune in the paper. 60 chairmen of large companies, so it was more than just the signatories of the funders of the study. They wrote in La Tribune du Dimanche to say, yes, we can accelerate this ecological transition, and ecological transition means changing a lot of things, not just energy transition, not just climate, but this wide-ranging transition. And this new social contract. So it is really supported and endorsed at the highest corporate level, which has allowed us to go in companies, like we did in Total Energy not so long ago, to have, we were invited to present it to Société Générale in the banking sector, in AXA, and several others. BNP Paribas, so that it is discussed, it is endorsed, it is progressing inside the professional milieu at least. Next chart is what happens now. It's this new narrative that is to be supported and continues. Thank you for the opportunity today. It is also embedded into corporate strategies and practice in various multi-stakeholders working groups. We have actually now a working group, and we will publish soon something on sufficiency. What does it mean? What does it mean for a company to go along that line? What sort of business models are providing this sufficiency, and so on? And to be very concrete, even if we said everything has to be decided by everybody, we thought some things could be started by companies on their own. So we supported some and created a few new collective initiatives to lead to some commitments, enhancing stakeholders' dialogues and action on some specific topics where they thought they could do it. So I think that I am about it. I see you have, I think the next one is just where you can find the complete study. It's available on the website, press release and full study. And even what we did lately is that we published together with a magazine called Oui Demain, which is quite a progressive French magazine, a little supplement with examples of places, organizations, not only companies, but also some companies, and not only our members, really outside, showing that some people were already starting of each of the 12 priorities. So we have an example for each priority. We have a nice, living, successful example of something that has been built to go into that direction. So we are very happy that it's starting to be known, and I am very eager to get your reactions and comments.
Thank you so much, Claire. Pierre-Edouard, you're muted. Yeah, I'll just keep talking.
Yeah,
thank
go
you so much.
ahead.
That's a great overview of the study and some practical efforts and steps that we can take away. If you're listening live, please do drop some questions or comments into the chats, and we'll look out for those. But in the meantime, Fabiola, do you have a question?
Yeah, yes, a question we had the other day. Actually, Claire, excellent presentation, and really on sustainability. I'm managing some projects in my company, so I'm really very happy to have heard you. Lots of ideas, lots of things. So the question is, how do you put this into practice? How do the businesses are impacted with your approach?
First, the business are actually putting this into practice in a number of. There have been discussions. We are in working groups, let's say on building renovations, for example. With it's a large group, it's a large sector with a lot of interest going further and less. But there are a number of our members have taken initiatives in that direction for funding, for developing, and so the system is actually improving. You have it in the transportation field, where if you take the electric vehicle company fleets, business fleets, you have now regulation is starting to come. The cars are starting to come as well, and the charging infrastructure is starting to come as well, with business based also on some voluntary commitments by business to say, okay, I will start this. So I am committing to go 100% EV by such and such date. So then when you make this sort of commitment, is because you know that you are going to work with your city. For the city, you have started to do this. So we have a number of examples in that of that kind, and then we also have some of the companies that are, of course, including their people, their collaborators into this movement, promoting it, and even helping them doing their own personal transition. One of the voluntary commitments is a dialogue with unions to put together some plans where a company is actually helping and suggesting that the people, workforce, is taking part in their personal transition, and the company is supporting this. So that it is not. What's important is this feeling that it's not only a business issue, it's not only technology that is going to do this transition. It's really something that is to be built jointly and collectively by society and various components. So it's you cannot say there is one example that will have made it completely, but you have a lot of local initiatives. Cities are now working with their company, with their business. The businesses settled around to see how do we do this moving. How do we move people, and can we organize this together? You have a lot of ecological, industrial ecology platforms. Fatal heat that is being recovered and used in other businesses or other things like this. So we are moving in a circular economy is also coming up. And what's difficult is these frameworks for carbon price. But as you know, the ETS is going to have a second market, which will create a carbon price and a carbon cap. for the whole Europe. So this is already in the cards, and will be the framework that will. What's important is that when this framework appears and the oil price, gasoline price starts to be more expensive because of this market, then the solutions have to be ready and affordable. And so companies are working with that perspective. Policymakers are working with a number of things that have been tried. We have had, for example, the social leasing for electric vehicles, which in 2 weeks were so successful that they had to stop it. It will have to be taken again at some later point in a different form but it shows that there is an aspiration to do things that people are ready to move if they can move. So if there are some financial solutions, if there are some, so that's starting to move too slowly, but it's moving in that direction, I think. We have had also a number of cases where cities wanted to. Sorry, you had another question, maybe, but I can give many examples, so stop me.
No, David, maybe for a question. Otherwise, I have plenty of questions on my notebook. I'm happy to fire away if we need some.
Yeah, just a point that resonates with me. I live in just outside of Calgary, and I see in Canada, and I see in terms of transportation and fuels, you need this long-term approach that goes beyond the political cycles. Like we've had issues in North America, Canada, US with carbon pricing that changes with political situations and cycles, and same in the UK, issues with transportation, the move to hydrogen, and it's important, I think, that organizations and efforts see this long term and build policies for the long term. So.
Yeah. Absolutely true. That's where sometimes we find that the European policy landscape is very complex. The European Union policy landscape is complex with these levels and so on, but at least it gives it some these time lags, these long-term decisions that are difficult to make, but then they are also difficult to change afterwards. So it's probably quite favorable for this transition, a little bit less stop and go. Yeah.
And less impacted by the shorter term, like 3, 4, 5 year political cycles. Yeah.
But it is true that the carbon market has taken a long time before it raised to a level of price that was meaningful for any investment. So long term is, but it was there, and in the end, it was the cap was low enough that the price started to mount.
Yeah. Go ahead, Pierre-Edouard.
I do have one question. It's not that often you get a chance to ask. I'm quite curious about sociology in general, and having you member of the CSE. So this is a think tank, right? EPE is a think tank. Probably lots of smart people, great analysis, usable, potential solutions, etc. But have you considered playing an active role engaging with regulators on some of this? So that would be one, to inform, say, hey, this is what we came up with, this is what sounds reasonable. So kind of influencing where the regulations could go, because if we don't do that, then we lose part of it's like losing part of our brain, So that's part of the first question.
CESE, the Economic Council Économique et Social, is actually doing that, and I was very interested, and I hope I contributed for them to take. It's a representation of the organized civil society. It's business is represented, unions, associations, NGOs, environmental NGOs, and so on. And so they try to reach some sort of a consensus. And when there is an opinion, advice that is published, it is a consensus. Nobody has vetoed it. And it's important, interesting to see that this council has published an opinion on sufficiency, saying we cannot avoid to go into that along that line, which means that business has voted for that as well. It does, again, it's a sufficiency meaning material degrowth, because we have resource problems and so on. So we have limits. So we have to go into that direction, which means that they are going a little bit along these same lines of a different kind of growth. And it is some sort, it is, these reports are very widely debated into the council. There are solid procedures to make sure everybody has read it before they vote. And so it means that these ideas are progressing, and they are, it's not the parliament, but they are the third assembly of the French Republic. So they advise the government, and they produce these advices that are actually progressing and circulating ideas, influencing. It's more influence. It's more a demonstration of how the society has moved, to which point the society can accept to go. And it's and they have voted for caps on wood and meat, for stopping for caps on plastic production, to reduce plastic production in the world, to avoid this waste pollution in the plastic pollution in oceans and actually everywhere. So there are some positions that are obviously too progressive to be voted, and cannot be voted by France only, but are actually pushing ideas in the public landscape, in public minds, on this path.
Okay, so these recommendations made public are designed to also influence policymakers, etc., but not in any other active way than those publications. Okay.
They are presented to policymakers once someone has made the report, and I made it on this biomass governance, and I made another one on this workforce adaptation, competence, and so on, how a workforce can make the success of ecological transition. Then we go and present it to various policymakers to see how they react. Say, we have discussed this, and that was a trade-off. What are the issues, and so on. So it's influence.
Very good. And then the other question is, you've mentioned the link and the partnership with WBCSD, so the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. What sort of communications happened between your entity? I mean, the work that you produced, did that get fed back to them? Did they then WBCSD say, oh yeah, this was also happening in other countries? What's the relationship and the commonalities?
We did two things. First, they had done their own Vision 2050 some time ago, a couple of years ago. So they were less detailed in what it means in terms of these limits of the planet, but still it was along the same lines, but it was not as detailed and concrete as what we did. So we communicated with them on this. The second thing we did is that we have a group of the European partners, and we presented it in a quite detailed way to this group that was very interested, and some of them were actually starting on the same lines. So we have, this is encouraging to see that it's not only us, it's other places where this same rationale is actually working and influencing people. And we hope very much. So we have discussed, as I said, with stakeholders. There are various ways of saying things, but each one has their own way of marketing, understanding. But I think the ecological transition, of course, there is some sort of a backlash these days, and we are very aware of that as well. But the limits of the planet are there. They are not going to move before a million of years. So we have to live with that. And these days, I think there is a realization that in Europe, at least, that this is we cannot just avoid the problem. And it's probably better. The European way of handling things is to try to handle things peacefully, more than with conflicts. And we hope that Europe is staying firm on the Green Deal ambition and so on.
Hey, Claire, that's given
which is very compatible with this study.
That has given us some serious food for thought, and really appreciate that, especially the European perspective, and that being one that the rest of the globe can learn from through your experience and learn from through your philosophy.
Yeah. That and the yellow vests also, which aggregated a number of angry people, but they were angry for different reasons, but they did go out and they protested. Absolutely. But that did create some social backlash for a number of things. For the energy transition, we're not that far. We have to negotiate that yellow vest kind of attitude also.
Yeah. I need to drop. Thank you so much, Pierre-Edouard, Claire, and everyone who joined. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right. Fabiola, any final question? Or
I have to go to another meeting as well. Thank you very much, Claire. It was excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. So
perfect. Thank you.
I will do just the final closing. So I will thank every one of you for joining today, our speaker Claire in particular, and we hope to see you again at one of our next webinars. We'll now conclude with a short video from SPE. Goodbye.
People ask me why they should join SPE, and what I tell them is that SPE is absolutely essential. Frankly, if SPE didn't exist, somebody would have to go out and create it. When you graduate with a technical degree, a petroleum engineering degree, or other engineering degree, you get a lot of really good knowledge that gets you started on your career, and you learn a lot on the job. But the jobs that we have in this industry, they're really quite difficult. And you've got to have other resources, either to solve specific problems you might be having at the moment, or to better understand how to solve, daily issues that you work on. SPE provides opportunities to learn about new things that people are working on. There are great articles in JPT Magazine and the other magazines that we have that are really useful. If you're not reading JPT every month, I tell you it's essential to do that to keep up with the technology. We have excellent conferences where you can learn from people who have solved very difficult problems in our industry. And doing that is just incredibly important and incredibly useful. To me, I don't see how you can be an engineer working in the petroleum industry and not find value in the resources and the opportunities that SPE provides. It's an opportunity to meet people who can help you in the industry, and it's an opportunity to get the knowledge you need to be successful.